Good afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'm going to be reviewing to you Pocket Card Jockey Ride On for the Nintendo Switch. This is a port of an iPhone remake of a 3DS game called Pocket Card Jockey. And while I normally like to talk about the changes made when talking about a remake, there honestly aren't a whole lot of changes worth talking about besides that everything has been converted to work on a single screen and you can play with traditional controls instead of being forced to use the touchscreen. So going forward, let's just treat it like it is a brand new release. There are plenty of solitaire and horse racing games out there, but have you ever played a game that has both of them in it? Yes, that's right. This is an unlikely mashup of doing well in a game of cards to affect your performance on the horse racetrack. What you do is, as you're racing, you'll have sets of cards appear, and in order to clear out the cards, you need to first click on one, and then click on the card that has one above or one lower in value. So for example, if you have a 3, then you clear that by finding a 2 or a 4, and you get bonus points if you do combos. Now where the horse racing part comes in is that you can choose which position on the racetrack you're in to affect how easy or difficult the solitaire rounds are, as well as how much energy your horse has to pull ahead in the home stretch. So if you're in an area that's more white colored, then solitaire will be easier, but you won't charge up as much energy. And you need energy to be able to move around the track effectively. But the harder the solitaire you play, then the more energy you'll charge up. So there's an interesting risk versus reward factor at here, and while I'm generally not a big fan of that kind of game design, it works really well here because it accommodates players of multiple skill levels, while at some point it'll say, okay, now that you've warmed up to the basics, now try going to the harder rounds of solitaire. But if it just proves to be too hard, maybe go to the easy one to boost up your horse's mood. Admittedly, the game tries to throw a lot of mechanics at you, and all of them very early into the game. And while I've heard that the remake rewrote the tutorials so that they're a lot simpler, it still took a very long time for me to grasp the game's mechanics. I think it was about halfway through my play session when it finally clicked, and I realized, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. To prevent you from going through the same frustration I did, I'm not going to explain every little mechanic in depth. I'm just going to gloss over a few important things to consider. One of the reasons why you would want to adjust your position on the racetrack between rounds of solitaire is that there are cards that appear, and if your horse runs into those cards, then you have the chance to collect those cards in the next round of solitaire. The cards can be experience points for your horse, which increases your statistics. There are skill cards that allows the horse to learn new maneuvers. Now these maneuvers are activated at random, but they do have a ranking of weak or strong that'll determine how often they will occur. There are junk cards which deplete your energy if you don't pick them up. There are stamina cards that increase your horse's stamina, which again, you'll need stamina so that the horse doesn't get tired during the home stretch, which we'll get to shortly. And so you always want to be in this micromanaging type of scenario where you think, okay, what is the optimal way to get these cards, while at the same time recognizing that depending on my position in the track will affect how quickly the horse burns through stamina. So just like in real life, if you're running around a turn, you might want the horse to be closer to the inside of the turn. Once you get to the home stretch, and the game will warn you ahead of time when it's coming, so it's not just gonna be sprung on you, that's when you get to take direct control of the horse and move it up and down to shift its position among all the other race horses. You have a couple of options for how to get ahead in this part. You have a brake button, which the game openly advises you not to use unless you really have to, because you obviously want to go fast in a horse race. You have a certain number of whips that you can do. Think of them like the carrots in Ocarina of Time that allow the horse to get a burst of speed, though using them too much in succession will lessen the effect. It can also help you squeeze past other horses if they're in your way. And finally, if you picked up a boost card during the race, then you can get all blue flame-like as though you're turning into a persona and blaze through the horses at high speeds. And you can even combine them with whips to get even more effective and get the horses out of your way even better. Now, one thing that the game doesn't really tell you explicitly, but it more implies, is that there are some races that no matter how good you are going to lose, because it wants you to feel like an actual horse racer, that sometimes other horses are just better and you could be the best trainer in the world, but you're still going to fail. However, the game doesn't make you feel too bad about it, as after your horse has lost a certain amount of times, the game will say, "Congratulations, your horse is retired." And if you have a male and a female horse come together in the farm, then they can breed and make a foal. And then that foal will inherit some of the characteristics of the parents. And so your objective is to get the horse as far as you can in the life map and try to see how many contests you can win. And then after you lose, then you pass that on to the foal, and the foal will get further along, and so on until you eventually win all the trophies. This is where one of my biggest problems with the game came in, and that's that it doesn't have a very clear structure for the end goal. After a while, I started to think, when is there ever going to be story again? There was a brief story synopsis at the start, but I'm not seeing there's any kind of progression going on here. So eventually I went on YouTube and Google, well now it's Microsoft Bing for some reason, and tried to search, okay, is there an ending to this game? And I could not find a single video or walkthrough that said definitively, how do you beat the game? The closest I got was a review from Nintendo Life that just says, if you can call it an objective, then you have to get all the trophies. At that point, I treated it like my Hades review and just said, you know what, in that game, I escaped from the underworld just because the game wants me to do it again. I'm going to consider that beating the game. So in this case, I raised 2 successful horses, I breeded another horse, and then that horse got to go to retirement, and I believe I eventually ended up breeding 3 different foals, and I competed in some of the most prestigious cups. The only one that I didn't do was the one where the music started getting all intense and orchestral. So I guess you could say I beat the game, if you can call it that, but I definitely wish the game was a bit more clear, had more vignettes that told you, like, hey, there's some plot developments and your character is improving here and recognizing his or her weaknesses. The lack of structure may be too reminiscent of Animal Crossing to some players, and some might want more of a guidance or a specific end goal. Now, one thing you can do to help improve your horse's performance is that you can visit the shop Happy Horses and buy various stat boosting items. You can equip up to 4 at a time, and these are always active. So unlike the skills, which trigger semi-randomly, these are always active. Some examples are stamina carrots, which boosts how much stamina the horse has. There are lucky gloves that make it so that you happen to get really good cards when you draw them. The Joker crop allows jokers to appear, which can connect to any card. And these are real game changers, but to prevent the game from being completely broken and allowing you to cheese past most of the battles, the items get progressively more expensive the more races you're in, and the frequency at which the shop will be open will be less and less. There will eventually come times where you'll go several races in a row with the shop closed. Now, you might be wondering if there's anything more to the game than just playing solitaire and positioning your horse. Not much. The Ride-On remake introduces a daily challenge mode where you can play a game of solitaire with no time limit and no other horses, and if you completely clear out all of the cards, you get a present. I could never somehow get these presents to work. They looked like they were just items from the shop, but they didn't show up in my inventory when I went to the next race. It was still really fun to have a stress-free round of solitaire, though. You can also compete against players from all over the world, but I did not test this mode because 1, I don't typically like doing online multiplayer games, and 2, even if I did, Nintendo's track record with Switch Online has been more on the miss than the hit side. So I just said that's a cool little novelty if you're tired of AI, but it's not something for me personally. I really liked Pocket Card Jockey. I really wish I had played it on the 3DS back when it was still out, but I'm glad that this Switch version allows a new generation of players to experience a masterpiece, especially as from what I've heard, the 3DS and iPhone versions are no longer available to purchase. I paid $15 for this, again, not in my own money because I had a gift card, but even if it was through my own money, I would have thought that this was a worthy purchase. I think it's a really good price for a game that is so simple but yet so effective. The graphics aren't spectacular, but they get the job done. And this, honestly, is probably the best game Game Freak has ever made. I think because Game Freak both published and developed it, they were given a lot more freedom to just take their time and make it how they want. They didn't have to worry about the Pokemon Company and Nintendo and creatures telling them what to do and forcing them through unreasonable deadlines. So if you don't like Pokemon, then you might actually like Pocket Card Jockey. But ask yourself, do you like Solitaire and horseback riding? Because if you like neither, you're probably not going to like this game. If you want a game that has more structure and story, this is probably not the game for you. But if you really like card games, if you like micromanaging, if you like some really witty and out there writing, even if there's not much of a conclusion, you're going to love this game. It's very reasonably priced. Sadly, it has no physical version, so yay for game preservation when the Switch eShop inevitably closes, but while you still have a chance, I suggest you pick it up, especially if it goes on sale. Just remember that you are going to lose some races, and the game is going to realize that, and you'll just keep up the loop of raising a horse again and breeding another one and going through the next life map, and eventually you'll try to win all the trophies. But my personal recommendation is to take it at your own pace. I think a good enough point to call it quits if you don't want to be playing the game forever is after you've successfully retired a foal. After that, I think you can safely say you've seen enough of the story where it's a satisfactory conclusion. So with that, thank you very much for watching. Let me know down in the comment section what you thought of the review and if you have any questions, concerns, or critiques. And until the next time, remember to keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye!